Chapter 21, The Lotus Pond. After the children returned home, the Buddha did walking meditation. He lifted his robe to wade across the river and then followed a path between two rice fields that led to a lotus pond he liked very much. There he sat down and contemplated the beautiful lotuses. As he looked at the lotus stems, leaves, and flowers, he thought of all the different stages of a lotus's growth. The roots remained buried in mud. Some stems had not yet risen above the surface of the water, while others had barely emerged to reveal leaves still curled tightly shut. There were unopened lotus flower buds, those with petals just beginning to peek out, and lotus buds in full bloom. There were seed pods from which all the petals had fallen. There were white lotus flowers, blue ones and pink ones. The Buddha reflected that people were not very different from lotus flowers. Each person had his or her own natural disposition. Devadatta was not like Ananda. Yasodhara was not the same as Queen Pamita. Sujata was not like Bala. Personality, virtue, intelligence, and talent varied widely among people. The path of liberation which the Buddha had discovered needed to be expounded in many ways to suit many kinds of people. Teaching the village children was so pleasant, he thought, because he could speak to them in such a simple way. Different teaching methods were like gates by which different kinds of people could enter and understand the teaching. The creation of Dharma gates would result from direct encounters with people. There were no ready-made methods miraculously received under the Bodhi tree. The Buddha saw that it would be necessary to return to society in order to set the wheel of Dharma in motion and to sow the seeds of liberation. 49 days had passed since his awakening. It was now time to depart for Uruvela. He decided to leave the following morning, parting from the cool forest by the banks of the Naranjara River, the Bodhi tree, and the children. He wanted first to seek out his two teachers, Alara Kalama and Upaka Ramaputta. He was confident that they would attain awakening in no time at all. After assisting these two venerable men, he would find the 5 friends who had practiced austerities with him. Then he would return to Magadha to see King Bimbisara. The next morning, the Buddha put on his new robe and walked into Uruvela while the morning air was still misty. He went to Svasti's hut and told the young buffalo boy and his family that the time had come for him to depart. The Buddha patted each of the children gently on the head, and together they walked to Sujata's house. Sujata cried when she learned the news. The Buddha said, "I must leave in order to fulfill my responsibilities, but I promise that I will return to visit you whenever I have a chance. You children have helped me greatly, and I am grateful. Please remember and practice the things I have shared with you. That way I will never be far from you. Siddhartha, dry your tears now and give me a smile." Sujata wiped her tears with the edge of her sari and tried to smile. Then the children walked with the Buddha to the edge of the village. The Buddha was turning to say farewell when he noticed a young ascetic walking towards them. The ascetic joined his palms in greeting and looked curiously at the Buddha. After a moment, he said, "Monk, you look most radiant and peaceful. What is your name, and who is your master?" The Buddha answered, "My name is Siddhartha Gautama. I have studied with many teachers, but no one is my teacher now. What is your name, and where are you coming from?" The ascetic answered, "My name is Upaka. I have just left the center of Master Udaka Ramaputta. Is Master Udaka in good health?" "Master Udaka died just a few days ago." The Buddha sighed. He would not have a chance to help his old teacher after all. He asked, "Have you ever studied with Master Alara Kalama?" Upaka answered, "Yes, but he too has recently died." "Do you by any chance know of a monk named Kondana?" Upaka said, "Yes, indeed. I heard about Kondana and 4 other monks when I was living at Master Udaka's center. I heard they are living and practicing together at the deer park in Isipatana, near the city of Varanasi. Gautama, if you will excuse me, I will continue on my way. I have a long day's journey ahead." The Buddha joined his palms to bid Upaka farewell, and then he turned to the children. "Children, I will follow the road to Varanasi to find my 5 friends. The sun has risen. Please return home now." The Buddha joined his palms in farewell. Then he followed the river northwards. He knew it would be a longer route, but easier to travel. The Neranjara River led northwards to where it emptied into the Ganga. If he followed the westward course of the Ganga, he would reach the village of Pataligrama within a few days. There he could cross to the other side of the Ganga and reach Varanasi, the capital of Kasi. The children gazed at him until he was out of sight. They were filled with terrible sadness and longing. Sujata cried, and Svasti felt like crying too, but he did not want to cry in front of his brother and sisters. After a long moment, he said, "Sister Sujata, I need to get ready to tend the buffaloes. We should all head home. Bala, remember to give Rupak a bath today. Here, I'll carry Bhima." They followed the riverbank back towards the village. No one spoke another word. The elder Ananda was gentle and friendly, as well as unusually handsome. And he did indeed possess an uncanny memory. He remembered every detail of every discourse the Buddha gave. He repeated the 11 points the Buddha had elaborated in the sutra on tending water buffaloes, to Svasti and Rahula's gratitude. Svasti realized that Ananda would remember everything Svasti had just recounted about the Buddha's time in the forest near Uruvela. While Svasti recounted his story, he glanced often at Bhikkhuni Gautami. Her sparkling eyes told him how much she enjoyed listening to all he was saying. He made a special effort to include as many details as he could remember. Bhikkhuni Gautami especially enjoyed hearing about all the children in Uruvela, like the time they ate tangerines mindfully with the Buddha in the forest. It was easy to see how much Rahula enjoyed hearing about what Svasti had to say. Although the elder Asaji had not made any comments during the 2 days Svasti told his story, it was clear he was enjoying it also. Svasti knew that Asaji was one of the 5 friends who had practiced self-mortification with the Buddha. Svasti was most curious to know what happened when the Buddha met them after 6 months of separation, but he was too shy to ask. As if she could read his thoughts, Bhikkhuni Gautami said, "Svasti, would you like to hear the elder Asaji tell us what happened after the Buddha left Uruvela?" Asaji has been with the Buddha for 10 years now, but I don't think he has ever spoken about what happened in the deer park at Isipatana. Master Asaji, would you consent to tell us about the Buddha's first Dharma talk and some of what has taken place in the past 10 years? Asaji joined his palms and responded, "No need to call me Master, Bhikkhuni Gautami. Today we have already heard a great deal from Bhikkhu Svasti, and it is almost time for meditation. Why don't you all come to my hut tomorrow? and I will tell you all that I remember. Chapter 22. Turning the Wheel of Dharma. Assaji was practicing the austere way in the deer park. One day, after his sitting meditation, he noticed a monk approaching from off in the distance. As the stranger came closer, he realized it was none other than Siddhartha, and he quickly told his 4 friends. Padaya said Siddhartha abandoned the path halfway. He ate rice, drank milk, and visited with the village children. He really let us down. I say we shouldn't even greet him. So the 5 friends agreed not to meet Siddhartha by the gate to the park. They also decided not to stand and greet him if he should enter the deer park by himself. But what actually took place was entirely different. When Siddhartha entered the gate, the 5 ascetic companions were so impressed by his radiant bearing that they all stood up at once. Siddhartha seemed to be surrounded by an aura of light. Each step he took revealed a rare spiritual strength. His penetrating gaze undermined their intention to snub him. Kondana ran up to him and took his begging bowl. Mahanama fetched water so that Siddhartha could wash his hands and feet. Padaya pulled up a stool for him to sit on. Vapa found a fan of palm leaves and began to fan him. Assaji stood to one side, not knowing what to do. After Siddhartha washed his hands and feet, Assaji realized he could fill a bowl with cool water and offer it to him. The 5 friends sat in a circle around Siddhartha, who looked kindly at them and said, "My brothers, I have found the way. I will show it to you." Assaji half believed and half doubted Siddhartha's words. Perhaps the others felt the same, for no one spoke for a long moment. Then Kondana blurted out, "Gautama, you abandoned the path halfway. You ate rice, drank milk, spent time with the village children. How can you have found the path to liberation?" Siddhartha looked into Kondana's eyes and asked, "Friend Kondana, you have known me a long time. During all that time, have I ever lied to you?" Kondana admitted that he had not. "Indeed, Siddhartha, I have never heard you speak anything but the truth." The Buddha said, "Then please listen, my friends. I have found the great way, and I will show it to you. You will be the first to hear my teaching. This Dharma is not the result of thinking. It is the fruit of direct experience. Listen serenely with all your awareness." The Buddha's voice was filled with such spiritual authority that his 5 friends joined their palms and looked up at him. Kondana spoke for them all. "Please, friend Gautama, show us compassion and teach us the way." The Buddha began serenely. "My brothers, there are 2 extremes that a person on the path should avoid. One is to plunge oneself into sensual pleasures, and the other is to practice austerities, which deprive the body of its needs. Both of these extremes lead to failure. The path I have discovered is the middle way, which avoids both extremes and has the capacity to lead one to understanding, liberation, and peace. It is the Noble Eightfold Path of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I have followed this Noble Eightfold Path and have realized understanding, liberation, and peace. Brothers, why do I call this path the right path? I call it the right path because it does not avoid or deny suffering, but allows for a direct confrontation with suffering as a means to overcome it. The Noble Eightfold Path is the path of living in awareness. Mindfulness is the foundation. By practicing mindfulness, you can develop concentration, which enables you to attain understanding. Thanks to right concentration, you realize right awareness. Thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, and effort. The understanding which develops can liberate you from every shackle of suffering and give birth to true peace and joy. Brothers, there are 4 truths: the existence of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path which leads to the cessation of suffering. I call these the 4 noble truths. The first is the existence of suffering. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are suffering. Sadness, anger, jealousy, worry, anxiety, fear, and despair are suffering. Separation from loved ones is suffering. Association with those you hate is suffering. Desire, attachment, and clinging to the 5 aggregates are suffering. Brothers, the second truth is the cause of suffering. Because of ignorance, people cannot see the truth about life, and they become caught in the flames of desire, anger, jealousy, grief, worry, fear, and despair. Brothers, the third truth is the cessation of suffering. Understanding the truth of life brings about the cessation of every grief and sorrow and gives rise to peace and joy. Brothers, the fourth truth is the path which leads to the cessation of suffering. It is the Noble Eightfold Path which I have just explained. The Noble Eightfold Path is nourished by living mindfully. Mindfulness leads to concentration and understanding, which liberates you from every pain and sorrow and leads to peace and joy. I will guide you along this path of realization. While Siddhartha was explaining the 4 noble truths, Kundana suddenly felt a great light shining within his own heart. He could taste the liberation he had sought for so long. His face beamed with joy. The Buddha pointed at him and cried, "Kundana, you've got it, you've got it." Kundana joined his palms and bowed before the Buddha. With deepest respect he spoke. "Venerable Gautama, please accept me as your disciple. I know that under your guidance I will attain the great awakening." The other 4 monks also bowed at the Buddha's feet, joined their palms, and asked to be received as disciples. The Buddha motioned his friends to rise. After they took their places again, he said, "Brothers, the children of Uruvela village gave me the name the Buddha. You too may call me by that name if you like." Kundana asked, "Doesn't Buddha mean one who is awakened?" "That is correct. And they call the path I've discovered the way of awakening. What do you think of this name?" "One who is awakened. The way of awakening. Wonderful, wonderful. These names are true yet simple. We will happily call you the Buddha, and the path you have discovered, the way of awakening. As you just said, living each day mindfully is the very basis of the spiritual practice." The 5 monks were of one mind to accept Gautama as their teacher and to call him the Buddha. The Buddha smiled at them. "Please, brothers, practice with an open and intelligent spirit, and in 3 months you will have attained the fruit of liberation." The Buddha stayed in Isipatana to guide his 5 friends. Following his teaching, they gave up their practice of austerities. Every day 3 monks went begging for food and returned to share the offerings with the other 3. The Buddha gave them individual attention, enabling each monk to make rapid progress. The Buddha taught them about the impermanent and non-self nature of all things. He taught them to look at the 5 aggregates as 5 constantly flowing rivers which contained nothing that could be called separate or permanent. The 5 aggregates were the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. By meditating on the 5 aggregates within themselves, they came to see the intimate and wondrous connection between themselves and all in the universe. Thanks to their diligence, they all realized the way. The first to attain awakening was Kondana, followed 2 months later by Vapa and Padaya. Shortly afterwards, Mahanama and Asaji also attained arhatship. In great joy, the Buddha told them, "Now we have a real community, which we will call our Sangha. The Sangha is the community of those who live in harmony and awareness. We must take the seeds of awakening and sow them in all places." Dear friends, this is where we pause in our story. Go well and good night.